Look at that. Smooth as ever. You can't even tell I press record, man. It's crazy. I'm going to have to call HP, man. Come on, man. All right.
Funny how it
works. Yeah. Get this bad boy. There we go. All right. What's going on, everybody? It's Milton Spence coming to you live for the Well-Rounded Coaches Corner. I have here my brother Daniel Williams, man. I'm so happy to have this brother on, man. He is a very good gentleman, great guy. And most of all, he's going to share with us who he is, how we can get in touch with him, and what he's all about. And then we're going to get into why we even are having this show today. Daniel, the floor is yours, bro.
Awesome, man. Just wanted to say thank you, Brother Milton. Honor, as always, to support whatever it is that you have going on. I know we just recently connected, man, but I kind of feel like you're a brother, kindred spirit, somebody I've known for a long time without actually knowing him for a long time. As he said, my name is Daniel Williams. I am the Director for Business Development for Legacy Consulting Solutions. We are a digital marketing agency that specializes in helping small businesses and entrepreneurs leverage digital technology to grow their businesses. So I can be reached pretty much everywhere. Social media, the website is legconsole.com. I can be reached social media, Facebook at legconsole. Instagram at legconsole, Twitter at legconsole. So we're pretty consistent about our branding and about making sure that it's easy to find us. Also relevant to this discussion, I'm the executive director of the 10 Crowns program, which is a youth mentorship program specializing in developing better young men. So looking forward to this discussion. I think it's a very interesting and timely discussion. Looking forward to trying to figure out if we can come up with some solutions.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and that is the main reason why I have you on, is because I know for a fact that we can. So let's get into this and talk about why you're here. Today, what we're talking about and what we're discussing is men. Are we under attack? Or men, are we under attack? There's many different tones that I can use with that same question. But mostly what I want to find out from Daniel is, when you hear that, men, are we under attack? What does that mean to you?
Awesome. So to answer the question, is masculinity under attack? The silent word that I heard specific to that question is Black masculinity. And I think there has to be kind of a differentiation between masculinity in general and Black masculinity. And we'll delve into that a little bit later. And the answer is, to me, a resounding yes. I believe that a lot of our so when I hear the question, I hear it in the tones of what's relevant to what it is that we deal with as a community. A lot of our alpha men tend to be the ones that are targeted and end up not necessarily being raised in a way that helps them to become productive members of society. And if you can remove the effects, the positive effects of the alpha male, who tend to be the more revolutionary, then you get what we have currently, which is a community that's struggling to find leadership, balance, and progress.
Now, when you talk about Black male masculinity, help us understand why there is a distinction, or, what's the difference between our masculinity and someone else's. Give us a rundown on that, if you could.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if we were to take this back, looking from a historical context, the initial enslaved people that were brought over here were basically prisoners of war, right? They were the ones who went to war with a neighboring tribe, lost to that tribe took them prisoners. Somebody came in and said, hey, I'll give you guns and liquor and a Bible for those prisoners, and then took ownership of people and brought them over, made them property and brought them over to become workers. So you're starting with a stock of people that were warriors, a stock of people that were the fighters, that were for lack of a better word, revolutionaries. And so a huge part of the process of ensuring the safety. So when you look at census reports from the 1600s, the 1700s, going into the beginning of the 1800s, the slave population, the enslaved population was actually greater than the Caucasian population. So how do you, with numerical disadvantage, how do you ensure your survival and your ability to continue to perpetuate a particular system? So that's where you get the, and we all know, well, I don't know if we all know, but the Willie Lynch letter has been proven to be a fraud, right? It's not a true thing. However, the effects of the Willie Lynch letter are still very evident, in which the practices, the letter itself was not a real thing, but the practices were a very real thing. So this effect where you basically take the male, the strongest male that you can find, and you subjugate him, you break him in order to break everyone else. It was a physical, but more so a psychological task. And so you've created this situation where the male, specifically the Black male, is now psychologically not predisposed to starting revolutions. And let it not be said that our ancestors didn't fight back. We don't hear about the hundreds and thousands of revolutions that occurred that ultimately didn't succeed. That first generation of enslaved people, they knew what freedom was, and they fought hard to live free and die free, and for the right to die free. So when we speak of the difference between white masculinity and Black masculinity, there has to be a differentiation that's made understanding historical context. Black masculinity is about protection and about struggling with a level of freedom, the freedom to struggle and make it on your own. White masculinity is largely about the continuation and the perpetuation of a power system. So one is about individual freedoms, one is about maintaining a system.
So in order to control one, you obviously have to have a system in order to be able to do so. And another thing is you have to be in a position to take over those men by also constructing their belief through defeat. You have to construct their belief through defeat of their own people. So if I'm looking at you and you're stronger than me, and I see a dude coming towards you and he knock you out with one punch, I'm like, nah, man, I'm good, bro. You know, just going about your business. But if I see that you at least put up a very good fight, and I think that's a big point that you just made. The notion has always been, oh, you know, we didn't fight. You know, we didn't fight back. You know, they just took us. They just took us. And I always ask people, people I speak to about things like this, I say, help me understand something. If I come to your house right now, I knock on the door, I come in with your favorite alcohol to make the connection, the correlation, your favorite liquor, I come in with your favorite book or the favorite movie that you like, or if I have something I want to influence you with, I give, hey man, you need to read this because of this is going to do A, B, C, D, and make sure you read these parts because, A, B, C, D. No, don't pay attention to that part. Just read this, man. I'm telling you, it's going to change it. It's going to change your life. If I come in and I do that, okay, I come to your house, I do that to you, then I make you go with me. Or I say, you got to go with me. And then I forcefully grab you and try to throw you in the back of this van or whatever I got outside. You trying to tell me that you just gonna be like, okay, whatever you say. It's not gonna be. Unless you're a subservient, type of guy. But fact is, I think there is, and funny, Dejan and I spoke on this last year about masculine, what's that popular, everybody talks about, toxic masculinity. We talked about this last year. Yeah, that mess. But we talked about this last year because, where my head was at the time was the male aspect of who we are mentally and what we're all about has a lot to do with the brawn that we bring to a situation and the brass that we have in situations. I think what people want to see is a subdued male, someone who is castrated in more than one way. He's castrated in more than one way so that they can then control that man and make him be or do whatever it is that they want to subject him to. And I think what we have done as Black men is some of us educate ourselves and we say, wait a minute, that goes against every nature of who I am. Why in the world would I do that? And then some of us forcefully come back. But what I noticed, there's a big imbalance. There's never a happy medium in that where you have intellect meeting the brawn. You either have a disimbalance of either. And then if you try to get into a group and then attack said whatever virus, if you will, that's what I like to consider it, attack that virus, you still have a disimbalance because the brawn is only thinking with that. They're not allowing the thinkers to be what they are, and then they be what they are, and then they attack together. So that distinction between Black men and, any other man, I don't want to just say white because there's obviously more than white men in America, or Caucasian men, European, whatever you want to call them, in America. I have come to find, bro, that you have a lot of people, a lot of men in particular, and we just don't know who we are. So
that's a huge.
So what would you say to that male who thinks he has an idea of who he is based upon what he's experienced in his circle or environment, but doesn't know about like his lineage?
All right. So the best way that I can answer that question is because I'm Jamaican born. And we were talking off camera about I participated in a men's empowerment conference a couple of weeks ago. And one of the gentlemen stood up and he said, I was born in Africa, Cameroon. I'm from Cameroon, but I did not know I was Black until I came to America. And so there's that distinct, yeah, that was the face I made. That face you made right there is the same exact face that I made, wow. Right? There is a distinction that has to be made between those of us that are born from the diaspora and separated from the continent. And here's the reason why. Culture and origin and connection to original culture is the one difference that we have that no other group that has come before or after us has, where no one else is disconnected from their original culture. Everyone else that has come to these shores came willingly, but came connected to their original culture. So we're the only group of people that were disconnected from our culture and then given a substitute culture to define ourselves by. And the reason that this then speaks to your question is because how do you define an African designed man through Eurocentric standards? The two are not the same. And then you have to survive in a Eurocentric system that is designed to keep you second class. Not necessarily the individuals, right? Because they no longer have to actively keep the system in place. All they have to do is resist active attempts to tear down the system that's already in place. All you have to do is advocate for the status quo and things remain the same. So there's a huge role that culture and connection to culture plays in both the definition and the understanding of what it means to be a man, right? African cultures raise men very differently than Eurocentric cultures have. And without that connection, it's basically this. It's basically raising a lion amongst sheep and then trying to reintegrate him back amongst lions. It really is a very difficult thing to do because he now has the mindset of a sheep. And he's been defined by sheep mindset. It is almost impossible to integrate individuals who are disconnected from their culture into a dominant society with them trying to be like the dominant society.
That's heavy. That is heavy. the raising of a child based upon Eurocentric mindsets. Wow. And that goes to show, I have 2 children, and it goes to show something. I remember when I looked at, I studied psychology. I love psychology, right? This is my first love. I love people. I love the mind, how it works, how it doesn't work. So I remember when I had my son, and, you know, my wife, traditional Southern girl from Albany, Georgia. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. City boy, country chick. All right, here we are. We become one, right? Most people think Atlanta's country is not city, all city. But either way, we become one. Yes, sir. We become one. We become one. Literally, right? So to leave the cleave is a thing with us. And the cleaving part is still happening. We've been together now going on 5 years. All right.
It's a work in progress.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when we had my son, I told her, I said, I don't want him to be restricted from learning who he is and the nature of how he was born, and not just letting his environment define him. And when I broke it down to her, when I said it, because sometimes I talk and, you know, and she's like, what? And I told her, I said, what I'm saying is this: if we go out and you pay attention, you'll see a Caucasian child, right? They're able to be free, run around, depending, right? Most of the time, they're free, they run around, they do this, they do that, and they kind of stay within the parents' viewpoint. I said, on the other end, a black male child is taught to stay close because there's danger for him if he's free.
Correct.
I said, I don't want that for my son. I said, because it took me a long time to escape that mentality that just because I step outside of my house, I have to, I should be afraid or afraid of my own existence. I said, that is psychologically draining. And I said, there's no freedom in that. I said, it's physiologically draining and psychologically draining, because you have a young boy who comes into the world not knowing that he's hated by a certain person. So he's living as a person should. I said, and I don't want to take that from him. I want him to understand what it is to be in that situation when that time comes, not press upon him now that he has to suppress himself in order to wait to get here for a situation that may never come. And then he gets to a point in his life where he starts to rebel, because inside or deep inside, whether we were raised here or raised, well, I can't say or, but when we were raised here, inside, deep down inside, every male I've ever met, there's something that's calling at him, that's telling him, this is not who you are. This is not how you're meant to be. You need, and so a lot of us start to lash out in anger, whether it be at the woman in front of us, whether it be at the system around us, or whether it be to our own brothers. We lash out because we don't know how to say, I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm not free. I'm bound right now. I need to break free of this. And that further goes to show, back to our previous point, that we did not just go easily into the night. We literally fought. So, yeah, just not that I don't want to take the floor, but it's mostly about you. So give us a little bit more, if you would. Tell us something, man. You went to the conference and you learned some things as far as that conference is concerned. And please, next time it's, I think you invited me to this conference.
Yes, sir.
I think
I understand that the logistics from time to time are difficult to do everything, right? So I'll say this. I think that, so the thing that's, sorry, we said this off camera. So for context for those listening and watching, the theme of the conference was protection, and protection of the man, right? Historically, men have been known to be the protectors and the providers. And then the question was raised, but who protects the man? And so the conference theme was about protection of legacy, protection of story. I participated in a panel which was the protection of the community, right? But there was one panel that really stuck out to me, and it was a discussion that was had with young men. So it was a gentleman, the gentleman that was leading or moderating the discussion was a baby boomer. But it was a discussion had with gentlemen who were in their late 30s all the way down to, I think one of the young men was 19, right? And it was a discussion about young men and what it means to be a young man and what it means to be a young Black man in American society. And what stuck out to me was when he asked the question, what does manhood mean to you? And how do you know that you've become a man? And what was striking was the fact that everybody said, well, there really isn't a definition of manhood. There was, and it wasn't that, and this is important, and an important distinction to make. It wasn't that each of them had a different definition of manhood and they couldn't agree on a definition. It's that they all said, I don't know how to define manhood. And so there's something to be said for a society where manhood has traditionally been defined by dominant culture. And now as we're starting to kind of develop ourselves, the question comes up about what does manhood mean? And there's really no set standard definition of what manhood meant. And at that time when I heard that, I jotted down 6 words, 6 simple words that I think should be the very basis of how we define manhood. And the 6 words were 3 verbs and 3 nouns. So the 3 verbs are to love, serve, and protect our family, community, and legacy. And I feel like if we just boiled manhood down to those 6 words, if you love your family, love your community, love your legacy, if you serve your family, serve your community, serve your legacy, if you protect your family, protect your community, and protect your legacy, if we were able to teach every young man how to do that, we could really fix 80% of the issues that we have in our community without any outside assistance. The challenge is we continue to have a hard time defining manhood, specifically healthy manhood, specifically to alpha males. And because we have such a hard time defining manhood, manhood is then defined externally. It's defined by popular culture. It's defined by television. It's defined by music. It's defined by movies, right? Bad Boys 3 came out the other day, and I went and watched it. But what struck me was the fact that as I've grown, I could see the elements of toxic masculinity exhibited in that movie, right? Where masculinity is defined by all the negative traits, but not necessarily by any of the positive traits. And there was a little bit of that dichotomy in Martin Lawrence's character's development and his story arc, right? But it wasn't central to the story, it was secondary to the story. The understanding that manhood has become so difficult to define and masculinity has become, like you said, synonymous with toxic, requires us to redefine the parameters of manhood and then create some sort of mechanism by which we can develop better men.
I have to digest.
I've been having this since you reached out. Even after the conference, I've been having this discussion in my mind over and over and over again. I'll share this. One of the young women that I've connected with happened to come to the conference on the second day, and we were sitting next to each other. And the participants were speaking about the concept that as men, when we're boys, we get told to man up, right? If something happens, we're told man up, but we're never really told what that means. And she said, I hate it when that happens. I hate it when my ex-husband tells my son that. And I said, actually, I don't agree with that. And she said, why not? And I said, the reason, the principle that he's trying to teach is when we say man up, it's shorthand for don't let your emotions control you. That's ultimately what we mean. Do not let your emotions control you. If you allow your emotions to control you, you make bad decisions in the heat of the moment, and there are ramifications and consequences that can change the trajectory of your life. So when we say man up, what we're meaning is your emotions have to be, you have to learn how to manage your emotions. And she said, so why doesn't he tell him that? And I said, he's 6. You can't really give him all of the context yet. You kind of have to train him a certain way, and then as he grows older, you provide that context. And so I believe that this concept that telling a young man, man up, is negative. No, but what's necessary is to understand the context by which we needed it. As a people, we are very emotional. And you see that. I'm seeing that in the political process right now. I see that in the way that we interact with each other. You know, I had to make a change in even my own life where I, 4 or 5 years ago, as I was kind of maturing and evolving, I had to say, I'm no longer going to beef with someone who looks like me, right? I'm no longer going to beef with Black men. And I had to make a conscious decision of that. Now, I might argue, I might disagree. Basketball happens, but at the end of the day, I understand that you are my brother. And so if I don't see value in myself, then I don't see value in you. And ultimately, that is the number one issue that we've constantly had, in which it goes back to definition, right? If you let someone else define your worth, they're going to define it based on what's convenient for them. When we speak about our worth and our value, the number one issue that we have in our communities is that our young men don't see value in themselves, so they don't see value in someone who looks like them. And that is probably at the heart of 75 to 85% of the conflict. Because if you learned how to see the king in your brother, then all of a sudden, even when you disagree, you don't have conflict. You disagree, you look to find resolution peacefully. But if I don't see value in my own worth, then I don't see value in you, then now it's about survival. And for a long time, we've existed under survival rather than growth.
So let's talk about that a little bit, the whole brotherhood aspect, okay? What I was thinking when you were speaking was brotherhood applies to yourself, it applies to me, you know, because we are considered a part of a brotherhood. You know, we will be considered that, you know, because we're here in America. But if we were in Africa, and let's just say we both had, let's just say we both resided in the same continent and the land was split between the both of us. We all look alike. At that point, is there a brotherhood, or is it becomes a different type of, for you and me looking from America, we'd be like, yo, y'all brothers, you know, chill out. But just as the gentleman said, I didn't know I was Black until I came to America. I thought that, you know, we're just, you know, all Cameroonian. We're all just the same. But is there a brotherhood in that aspect? Because what I see is people who normally share a land, sometimes that brotherhood aspect goes out the window because all they really look at is that we're on the same playing field. So are we actually two kings? Are we, and that's a whole nother subject, but I've always said, the aspect of kingship, some people will say they were a king, but have the attitude or the mentality of a serf.
Yes.
You know, or a subject or whatever you want to call them. Heck, even slave. I mean, that's you know, that touches at our heart a little bit on the Black folk side, but it's a reality of where we stand. Nevertheless, I find a lot of brothers and sisters in the aspect of brotherhood. How do we get past the aspect of we're on the same playing field, so how can we be brothers? Or we're on different playing fields, how can we be brothers? You see what I'm saying? How do we get past that?
All right. The two parts to the answer. So the first one that I'll touch on is mindset, right? We seem to have and operate from a mindset, and we've been taught that because we grew up in a capitalist society, that resources are scarce. there's not enough resources to go around. When the truth of the matter is, there's more than enough resources for what is needed. There's not enough resource to account for greed, right? So if you have 50 billionaires owning as much as 50% of the population, then that gives you an idea of the scale of how wide that problem is. So it really comes from a standpoint of scarcity mindset. If I don't have enough and you have what I need more of, then I must take it from you. I will say the hardest thing for me in my development and in my growth was three words. I had to learn how to suppress my ego. And there's some days that I still struggle with it more than others, right? But there's some times when I had to learn that I can't take everything so personal that I react emotionally. Man up, right? I have to learn how to process something, understand it from a logical standpoint, and make a logical response to what was meant to trigger me to make an emotional response. And so we're not taught how to manage that. We're not taught how to do that. Now, when we speak about connecting back to our origin, we cannot discount the fact that Africa is a tribal land, right? So we come from multiple tribes, and so there's always going to be intertribe conflict. But I'm reminded of an African proverb that says, when brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits the land, right? So in the time that it's in any family dynamic, right? I didn't grow up with brothers. I grew up with two sisters. But when my sisters would fight, you could not be someone from the outside coming in to pick. Even if they were fighting, you could not come in from the outside to pick on one of them without the other defending the
You
other.
doggone right.
So that has to be the mentality first, right? Understanding that as a community, we have been targeted to remain second-class citizens. So one of the projects that I work on is a project called Mahogany Money. And it's basically around the fact that net black wealth is forecasted by 2053 to go down to zero. So the net black wealth, median net black wealth, forecasted to go to zero by 2053.
Yep.
So while we're fighting with each other, right?
Someone else is inheriting the land.
And so when it comes down to brotherhood, I'm not saying, and I hate the fact that everyone thinks that unity means that we agree on everything 100%. I believe unity has to first be around what is it that we agree on? Okay, how can we move forward with those? And where we don't agree, it will probably be 10 to 15%. But what we agree on is 85%. So how can we come together around the 85% we agree on, and we'll work out that 15 to 10% later on, and we'll find out that we can live with disagreeing on 15% of stuff if we address the 85%. But what happens quite often is we get so caught up in arguing about the 10 to 15% of disagreement that we don't actually focus on how to build together on the 85%. So I understand in my research, economics, group economics is a huge portion of opportunity and a huge area of opportunity for us. Education, like you were saying with your son, it's not enough to just allow him to go to school and become educated. There's a quote that says, a child who's educated only at school is miseducated. And so it's on us to create the systems necessary to put a level of cultural understanding behind who he is. Because if you raise a lion amongst sheep using sheep curriculum, then how do you socialize him to be a lion afterwards? His nature and his upbringing are at odds. So it's necessary to give context to the things that they learn when they go to school. Perfect example that I always come back to and I do this when I talk to young men. I say, in history, history is written by the winners. So in history, do you ever learn of all of the negative things that America has done? And they say, no, America is always the good guy. And I say, okay, have you ever heard of manifest destiny? They're like, what's that? I say, Manifest destiny was the theory that America would go from the West Coast, East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean, and all the way to the West Coast, the Pacific Ocean, and that it was God's destiny for America to go from sea to shining sea. We put it in our song. And they say, yes, I've heard of that. And I say, now, do they speak about the millions of inhabitants, native inhabitants of the lands that were massacred in order for that to happen? And they say, well, no, right? So you use two words, manifest destiny, to gloss over genocide of millions of people. And so it's necessary to understand the context when we teach young people how to socialize in this environment. It's necessary, especially your young men. It's necessary to teach them the context that, hey, understand that you have to learn this because this is the curriculum, but then teach them who they are, because the curriculum will never teach them who they are. The curriculum will only teach them who dominant society is.
Wow. Still got to digest. Okay. So look, that's heavy stuff, man. You got to understand that's heavy stuff. It's nothing to sneeze at, right? So one thing that I have always been a proponent of is brotherhood, and in the factor of being open to connectivity. I had this I don't want to say epiphany, but I had this thing where I was extremely upset earlier this week. And the reason I was upset was because I have had more brothers of the same skin tone or melanin and whatever you want to call it, black magic, be so disingenuous with me when it comes to this area of not only business, but the area of just genuine connection. I can tell a brother, look, I'm going to call you Friday around 2 p.m. Friday at 1:59, the phone is ringing and Milton is calling you. Because I'm all about not just keeping my word, but I'm all about being genuine and being true to who or what I say I'm going to do or what I say I'm whatever. I've learned that being honest is like honestly the best thing that could ever happen to anybody. So how do we as men come to a point where it is, where you say unity, where we unify? Because I know people who they either believe in God, they don't believe in God. They're homosexual. They're not. They don't like homosexuals. People from all walks of life. The only thing that makes us, here is the fact that we all share the same genitalia, right? And I think that I'm about to answer my own question, but I think I am. But I'm just going to ask you, how do we connect, even though we have so many different things that can pull at us in order to tear us away from each other? How do we genuinely connect with each other?
All right. So I'm going to answer your question by referring back to my definition for manhood. The love, serve, and protect, and then we speak about the community. That's where the connection has to come from, right? Because all of us are part of this community, regardless of what our beliefs are or what our sexual orientation is or where we stand on the political spectrum. We're all part of a sub-community of American society, right? I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, right? So I grew up going to church on Saturday. I went to all black churches. I went to all black schools. I went to a HBCU. And then I get into the real world, and the real world did not look anything like how I grew up, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to survive in that because through my time coming up through society or my upbringing, I was giving nuggets to which I could connect to a community. I could connect to people, right? It's also part of what has driven me to be so focused on trying to serve young people specifically in my community, because I understand that looking back at my path, there were people that provided a level of guidance for me, some wisdom for me, support for me when I was coming up. I didn't just wake up one day and I'm who I am today. It's people that have poured into me, people that have served me that got me to this point. So the real question really then, the answer to the question is there has to be a love and a commitment to serving our community, because that's an easy concept to unite around. Then the question that then comes up is, okay, what does our community need? And we just have to look at statistics, right? We know our schools tend to undereducate and underperform. We know that our neighborhoods tend to be under-resourced and underinvested. We understand that our families tend to be have fewer resources economically speaking, and don't necessarily have the same resources that regular society has. And it's a very simple answer, right? We look at the love and the family side of it, right? The simplest thing we can do is raise better men who, even if they don't marry the woman, raise their children in two-parent households. That's literally the simple. If we can serve our community and raise young men to raise their children in two-parent households, the poverty level of a single-parent household is more than double that of a two-parent household. So those two simple things, can we agree that our community needs to be served a little bit better? And can we commit our energy to do it? Because once you say we want to serve the community, you can pick what you want to do. Do you want to do it through the church? Do you want to do it through education? Do you want to do it through a mentorship program? Do you want to do it through an empowerment program? Do you want to sports? There's so many different facets by which we can serve a community. And then if we can just teach our young men to simply, if you have a child with a young woman, raise that child in a two-parent household with love, those two things will literally, we always talk about our issues as if all of our issues are external, and they're actually internal issues that we can address. They have an external impetus to them, a catalyst that's external, but the catalyst has been removed. The problem is we keep perpetuating that cycle, right? So a child that's raised in a two-parent household has a lower chance of growing up in poverty, which means they have a lower chance of actually getting involved with criminal activity. They have a higher chance of finishing high school, which also reduces their chances of getting involved in criminal activity. They have a higher chance of going on to college. They have a higher chance of completing college, which means that now that puts them in a position to grow up and create a lasting legacy of the potential of wealth, right? Those two simple approaches say, okay, I don't care what your beliefs are, what your personal beliefs are. Do you believe that the community is important? This is the work that needs to be done. What can you do to help us with that? And you'd be surprised, right? There are a lot of people that I might not agree with philosophically, but when we speak about community, I'm always saying, okay, fair enough. What is it that, you mentioned Dejan. Dejan's passion is returning citizens, right? Mm-hmm. He has a passion for working with the homeless. Now, that is not my passion, but I support what Dejan does because I understand how important his work is. My passion is youth empowerment, specifically around youth economic empowerment. And while that might not necessarily be his passion, he supports what I do because we understand that we're looking at two aspects of the same coin. He's looking at what happens after a mistake has been made. I'm looking at how can we minimize how many people make this mistake. My job, if I do it correctly, is to make sure that he has less work to do 10, 15 years from now, right? When we say community and family, if we could just look at those two things and commit to loving and serving those two things, I think that we could actually find that we have a lot more to unify around than what pulls us apart. But we get so caught up in arguing about all of this other stuff that we miss that opportunity to say, these are the issues that we have to deal with. How can you share your energy and your knowledge to move that mission forward?
And I think that's a big thing is service. I think a lot of times what we look at the most is, what can be done for us versus how can you serve? Um, Put something out there, sure, you might have people who are innovators and who are creatives. Well, get behind those people. You don't necessarily have to, if that's not what you're meant to do, you don't have to do it. That's fine. But you definitely can serve. You can always offer a lending hand. Most people, that's all they're looking for. Hey, just support it or just get behind me, and work with me. I'm not asking you to step out here and do everything I'm doing. I'm just asking you to help. So I think you answered the question pretty well, actually, as far as what we can do. What I'm looking for, though, the most, man, is how do we even get to a level of agreement when it comes to community? Because I really believe that a lot of us are escaping that. We don't want to be a part of our community, or we think our community is a certain thing, or we define it by poverty. We define it by a certain way of life, struggle, and we say that's our community. When all the time our community honestly is all the spectrums. People love to tote, we were kings and queens. I'm like, well, does that rank or rate? Does that smell like poverty to you? Or, how do you go from we were kings and queens, we were noble people, we had many great things happening for us, to the notion of, well, we're just meant to struggle here in America? I think that's the most craziest thought process that I've ever heard. You can't believe you're a king and queen when you do everything in order to stay impoverished. I think that a lot of us miss the fact, from just my interactions with people, we miss the fact of the education piece. That was a major part of who we are. The intellect, the knowledge, that is a major part of what makes us us, or community. We have ostracized those people a lot, especially growing up, high school, middle school. You ostracize those who are the nerds, or those who seem like the dorks, or whatever you want to call them. Those get ostracized in our community. And I can't speak to everybody, but I'm going to speak just to us. They get ostracized in our community, yet and still these same people, when they get older, you're expecting them to be as productive when they've now had to fight against their own people for being exactly who they are. Right. So like you said, as far as going back and working with the young people, and now I'll speak to two-parent household a little bit. Two-parent household to me is very beneficial, but
absolutely.
But here's another thing. A single parent, as far as being impoverished and things of that nature, I agree with that. What I've always said, though, if you're a lady, because I try to speak to this, understanding all sides. If you're a lady and your husband maybe have passed away, then you're in a single parent household at that point, not by, it's not by force. It is something that was meant to happen, or, whatever circumstance you want to consider it under. And your son or daughter, they're there and it's just you guys, it's just you three. It would behoove you to find male role models, such as yourself,
absolutely,
and other people to assimilate that two-parent household. Because mostly what the two-parent household does is, like you stated, it provides a balance, a mental balance for a child. They got one too much of mother and not enough of dad. That just throws everything off up here, to the point where when they start to interact with society, their mind automatically is going to go to those things that resemble what a dad should be, or what they think a dad is, based upon cartoons, YouTube, and whatever they think dad is supposed to do. Whether their dad was going to be like that or not, they start to say, well, I'm going to pattern myself after that. Then when they start to pattern themselves, in music for sure, they start to pattern themselves. They're like, oh man, it's got me in trouble. It got me this, or it got this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Then I'm going to associate myself with this. Well, that didn't happen. Well, then they become all of these different people.
Yes.
And they don't know who exactly they are. So they become all of these different people, a crossbreed of what they were never meant to be. So I've always said, find the male role model. If you're a single parent, whether you've decided you're not going to be with men anymore, whether you decided that, or whether you just lost somebody, which I consult people or counsel people who have lost mates, whether you have, just find that role model to help you.
Yes.
Even if you are that person, like me personally, I know for a fact that I'm going to have to utilize other men to help me with my son, because obviously,
Absolutely.
you see what I'm saying? It's sure,
Yes.
I can try to do it all on my own, but in reality, we were all sent here to help each other. And, I want male role models, I do want them in my community, but I want my son to be extremely cultured and extremely exposed to everything that is going to help shape him when he goes out here and tries to impact this world. So he's not just, I'm going to impact the world with on one side of the lens on. I want to impact the world with and be able to see it all as it is. And I grew to that, but initially I only saw it like this, because that's what I grew up around. So when I went around another culture, I was like, what in the heck are you doing? Like, this is crazy. And so,
Yep.
but that also helped my manhood, because I started to realize that, wait a minute, your dad doesn't consider you, or the men in your neighborhood don't consider you less than a man because you do this. You see what I'm saying? So anyway. So what I want to get on with you though, moving on, is this. So let's just say you have, because this is going to tie into it. You have the ladies. We've talked enough about men, and we could dive in on us a lot, but you have ladies.
Right.
Ladies have a lot of influence, especially Black women in our community. They have a lot of influence on manhood and what that means.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, they have a lot. What would you say to men who are growing up in a predominantly female society or family, mostly, a dominated female family? How would they connect, or how would they get to know? Because obviously the obvious thing is to get a mentor, things like that. But what if they are limited in that aspect? How would they even get to know who they are as a man?
Wow. All right. So I'm going to say this to answer the question you asked. The challenge with the way that you asked the question is the fact that we're now putting the onus on the young men to kind of lead the discussion when they don't know what they don't. Which is why I'm so passionate about coming back to us as grown men. So when you speak about this thing where intelligence is ostracized and criticized, right? I didn't move into a Black neighborhood until I moved back from overseas. And so I've always loved to read. And I was told that I speak white. And I said, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard, because I speak English. So if you want to speak Black, then you got to learn how to speak Swahili. And I lived in Africa, so I know some Swahili. So you're an idiot if you say that, right? But I've always been sarcastic. I could always use my tongue to defend myself. The challenge is that when we look at the issue has to be that the talented tenth of us that have done everything right, achieved, a lot of us don't come back. And I don't mean you have to move back into the neighborhood, right? Because we understand if there's poverty and you drive a nice car, somebody's gonna break into your car, like, not because it's a Black neighborhood, but because it's a poor neighborhood. And that distinction has to be made, right? We don't have these problems in wealthy, upper middle class Black neighborhoods that you have in neighborhoods that are more impoverished. So it's not a color issue, it's an economics issue. But even if you don't move back, you can still go back, because the issue that we have is that nature abhors a vacuum, right? Nature hates a vacuum. So in absence of positive male role models, popular culture will step in. Rap music will step in. And I grew up on 90s rap. I grew up on Mobb Deep, Jay-Z. I grew up on that.
Yes, sir.
Right? But I also had a dad at home who was a pastor. So there's that balance, right? But now you remove that, and I only grow up on the music, then I start thinking that Black masculinity is this. I've worn the saggy jeans that were 4 sizes too big for me and still sagging off of my butt. I've worn Timbs. You know, I've worn shirts 2 sizes too big for me. I shouldn't be double X. I should be wearing a medium, right? I've done all. Right. So at the same time that outwardly I was manifesting what popular culture said masculinity should be, my heart I was always a helper. I was always a reader. I always enjoyed education. And when I mentor young men, I try to tell them, look, the things that will make you successful in life, one of the most important things is to become a lifelong lover of learning. You don't have to like school to enjoy learning. They're not the same thing. But if you enjoy reading, if you continue to stay curious and research the things that interest you, you will find that you will create a path for yourself. So when I speak to young men, if you don't necessarily have somebody who you can pattern yourself after, you say, what kind of life do I want? Okay, who's doing that? Read their story. Read everything you can about their story, right? Today in social media, and I tell kids this all the time, if you only use social media to play, but you don't use it to improve yourself, then you're using it wrong. You have the ability to get to anybody in the world simply by sending a digital message, right? So if you're a young man who sees somebody that is living in the type of life that you want to have, and you've read their autobiography, you've watched their videos, you've figured out, okay, I've seen some of the things that they did, but how did they get from where I am to the first step that they took? Because sometimes there's a gap between where someone is and the first step someone else took. You can literally just reach out to them. Then you can figure out who their publicist is. You can figure out who their assistant is. All of that information is public domain. I always tell young men, Google, if you ask Google the right questions, Google will give you the answer to the questions that you ask. You just have to know how to ask the right questions. So if the question is, well, I want to be a digital marketer, I want to be a digital content producer. Okay, well, who is it that's currently doing what you want to do at the level you want to do it? Okay, what is their story? All right, you've analyzed their story, you see some things, you want more insight. Okay, how do you reach out to them? Right? It's not hard. We're not in the days, and it's amazing how people create their own mental block. We're no longer in the days where you have to put a letter on a pony and send it off and hope that by wolves on the way. Like, no, like you literally are. We can finish this conversation and I can send a message to someone in Japan and they will get it in nanoseconds. This is a different age. And I think a lot of young people don't understand that they're in an age of, yes, instantaneous information, but you can also make connections that can help you grow. And if you are very intentional about what it is you want to do, there is nothing that can stop you if you take the right steps. Really, the only thing that can stop you once you become intentional is your own mindset. So once you have the right mindset and you start taking the right steps, as long as you continue to be blessed with breath every day, you will have an opportunity. Even if you don't reach Pluto, you might hit Jupiter, right? Like, so when talking to young men and they're saying, well, this is what I want to do, but I'm having trouble finding people to help me, that's because you're asking the wrong questions. The question isn't, I can't find people to help me. The question you should be asking is, who's already doing it? Okay, how can I pattern myself after that person? You'd be surprised at how many young people will reach out and very earnestly, this is who I am. I'm 14 years old. I'm interested in learning a little bit about how you got to where you got. Do you have a few moments, either some insight that you can give me? Can you answer a few questions? And a lot of these people are very gracious to do so. So when speaking with young people, that's how a young person who has the right mindset, that's how they bridge the gap. But for everyone else who does not know what they don't know, that's on us. That's our responsibility to go back and give them an opportunity to see someone who looks like them, that has taken a path that they didn't even know was available to them. I have my brother Antoine, he's a lawyer who came out and spoke with Dumas. spoke to the young man in my mentorship program a few weeks back, and he said, "Well, what do you want me to talk to them about?" And I said, "Just tell them what you wish you knew when you were their age." It's that simple, right? Service is that simple. It's all it is imparting wisdom, and not wisdom like it all, but just wisdom as in, let me give you a little bit of game to help you navigate the pitfalls that I know is coming up. That simple approach, scaled, resolves a lot of our issues. It really does.
Yeah, it does. And I remember men in my past who helped me out so much, gave me so much free information, so much love. And what I really appreciated the most is that those men did it without expecting something in return from me, except to implement what they were telling me, which I believe was enough for them. So as you stated, and if people didn't pick it up, what he said in so many words was, it don't matter if he's in a male-dominated society, female-dominated society or family. It is on us as men to reach back and guide these young men, especially when we see them in those situations. And it's not a situation as if it's negative, but it's up to us to reach out to that mother on Facebook, or reach out to that person we see. They are hustling and bustling with two boys. It's okay to ask her without obviously hitting her. Now, if you're attracted to her, that's a whole different story. But if you reach out to her, if you reach out to her and earnestly want to help her, if she turns you down, don't force yourself, but, go to her with the intention of being an aid to helping her guide her young men, or mentor her young men to a place where they can start to either walk or run on their own. I think that's major what you said.
And it's important that I make the distinction, right? Because a lot of the times we have to get past this mentality that everything that we do has to be transactional. Where if I do something, there must be an immediate return to it. The reason why I mentor young men is not because I assume I'm going to get something out of it. It's two things. I'm paying back what was paid forward to me. So it's my responsibility to pay that back. But the second one is because I'm dating a woman. I'm involved with a woman who has 2 daughters, 3 granddaughters, right? So at some point, one of these knuckleheads is going to be somebody that's going to be involved with one of the young women that are in my life, right? And so part of it is that I'm also looking to impact positively the man that one of these young women in my life will ultimately end up becoming involved with. That is the one exception I make to beefing with people is if you put hands on somebody that I care about, then there has to be repercussions. But short of that, I have to be willing to put in the work on the front end, and to be willing to help model what I believe a young man should be. Because at some point, one of these young women in my life is going to look for somebody who will be their partner. And so if we don't create that, then we have another generation where the cycle is young woman, extremely young woman, raising children in single family households.
Yeah, very true. It's time for us to take back what's ours. It's time for us to give back. That's 100% true.
It is.
So, bro, I don't know if there's something you wanted to touch on yourself. For me, that was it. But if there's something you want to expound upon, brother, feel free. If not, then, please, by all means.
I think I managed to hit all of the points that I wanted to hit in this discussion. When we speak about manhood being under attack, which was the original question, I think it is very important to understand that we don't mean that people hate men. It's just that there has to be a understanding of what an alpha man is, an alpha male is, and we have to do a better job of building men that are alphas to serve rather than alphas to destroy. And there is a difference between the two, and it is possible that someone with an alpha personality can really do either or. right? Um, our responsibility is to help build alphas that are going to build communities. Um, Dominant society has done a really amazing job. I study those that are heroes that have been disruptive, right? So Marcus Garvey, very underrated, disruptive. One of the ones that I believe was extremely disruptive and hugely underrated is Huey Newton and Bobby Seale and the gentlemen of the Black Panther movement, because what they created was something that was community based and community focused, um, and designed around channeling alpha Black maleness for community building and development. And what we learned from that experiment was they don't, dominant society is not necessarily a fan of Black alpha maleness that builds communities, which is where we start to see the impact of the war on crime, the war on drugs, which removes alpha males from our communities. Maybe by design, maybe it's just a byproduct of the way things work. We have to do a much better job, and this has to be our responsibility as those of us that have become and achieved. Our responsibility is to create the systems to counteract those systems. It is our responsibility to look at the systemic issues, figure out what we can do internally, and then implement those programs that can scale and have a positive impact, and then to look at the policies and to advocate for a change of the policies that created the situations that we find ourselves in as a community. And that's it. That's all I have to say. That's my final word on the subject.
The final word. This brother has said a lot of deep things. And I don't mean deep in the fact where you have to just go in this super deep thought. I'm saying things that have multiple layers to them, that it would behoove every man who pays attention to this. Thank you to those who stuck with us to this point. It would behoove every man who's paid attention to this to really get into a position where you, even if you have children, that you are giving back to the children in your community, helping them, showing them how to be a man. And if you're struggling with your manhood in any form or fashion, feel free. Reach out to Daniel, reach out to myself, or reach out to another brother within your vicinity or in your life, period, who can help you identify who you are and what you are, and to stop labeling yourself with anything other than the purity of what you're meant to be, my brother. I'm telling you, do not allow yourself to be enslaved to anybody else's definition of what manhood should or is or whatever they think it should be. Okay? Do not put yourself in that. Go ahead, bro.
I do have one more thought. I will say this. I think one of the most important and most poignant things that has ever happened to me, and I don't know when the shift happened, but it was a friend of mine who was going through some things and reached out, just needed a place to crash, and stayed with me for a bit. But there was a point after that where every time he would reach out, he would tell me that he loved me. And I will say this, that one of the things that we struggle with as men is telling other men that we love them. So even my friend that I got off the phone with earlier, he, I love you, bro. And I will say this, that single-handedly has been one of the things that has helped me be a little bit more focused on being a positive rather than being a detriment. It is important that we express love for each other, and not in the way that it's weird. It's weird at first, right? The first time a man tells you he loves you, it is weird. But it was weird because once I got used to that, it made it easier for me to love the woman that I'm with. It also made me easier to tell my parents I love them, which was weird because I don't think I told my parents that I loved them before. And so it's one of those things where it defines, you change, once you open up the definition of masculinity and manhood, and which is why love was the first word that I used, because once you can find yourself saying to someone else that you admire, or someone else that you care about, I love you, brother, I appreciate you, that changes how you interact with everybody else in your life. and the effects, the growth is amazing. It really is. I will say that the first time I told my dad I loved him, he was kind of like, I love you too. But that was just not, it was just not something that we said when I was growing up, right? So even in my evolution as a man, my evolution as a man has contributed to my father's evolution as a man, right? And so at 72, 73, my dad is still evolving in manhood as I'm evolving in manhood. And so that is important. We have to continue to understand that manhood is not a destination, it's a process. And part of that process requires us to also be emotionally vulnerable and emotionally honest. We can't be controlled by our emotions, but we do have to understand individuals and also as a community.
Yes, yes. Emotional vulnerability, emotional openness is something that I have been preaching for a while now because I went through that same transformation. Once I had my kids, obviously I had my wife. You get with women and you tell them that you love them because, you know, you have something tied to that. But when I was able to, I remember a good friend of mine, he came to me in the same situation. He said, before he got off the phone, he was like, you know, I just want to let you know, man, I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate everything you've done. And I've heard that times before from other brothers. He was like, man, I just want to let you know I love you, man. And I sat there for a second because I was like, say what now? Say what? He was like, no, I just want to let you know I love you, man. You know, not like that. You know, he had to straighten it up.
I know. The first time we hear it that way, but that's part.
That's part of the maturity part. He was like, nah, man, you know, not like that, but I love you, man. You like my brother. And I was like, you know what, bro? I love you too, man. I love you too, dog. You know, and it shook me a little bit because I was like, dang, I've never really told another man that before. Now, I remember after that, the same thing, my grandfather who recently passed, I called him. And before we got off the phone, I said, hey, granddad, I just want to let you know I love you, man. And he said, yeah, I love you too, man. It's just funny how that happens, man. But that growth is there. Like you said, it's there for all of us.
Yes.
And it is extremely empowering where when I talk to my son, although he's 3 and we're talking, we're playing or whatever, he never goes a day without hearing his dad say, hey, man, I love you. Or come here, give me a hug. I love you. You know, or, you know, sometimes I find myself opening up more emotionally now. Like I'll pick my son up and I just be holding him and I just squeeze him real tight and he laughs because he can feel that love that dad has for him, you know. You know, we do that with our daughters. That's the easy part. You know, the girls, that's easy.
Yeah, of course, all the time.
But male to male love, genuine love and care has some power to it that I cannot describe or I cannot put into. No matter, I've read a lot and I still read, and I don't even think that can fit into a book. You can try, but I mean, it will be a very long book of the power that has in a male's life when he knows or he can tell that he's loved by another man in the genuine form of what love is.
Right.
So look, man, you know, Daniel, brother, I really, 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 I mean, you told me thank you, but honestly, bro, this is a humbling experience for me. And honestly, I am so grateful that you reached out. I put out the Facebook post and you were the first one. You don't know how much I appreciate that for you. I just appreciate it. And like we talked about off camera, as a brand new budding entrepreneur, somebody who has never really allowed the creative part of them to flow, to be doing it and to have people support that or want to work with you, it affirms or reaffirms like you're doing the right thing or you're on the right path. So mostly, bro, thank you so much, man. And I really, really appreciate you. You don't know how much, man. I really do. I really do appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you even putting it out there because it's been a conversation in my mind. It was a very timely thing. I think it was like a Tuesday and I just finished the conference on Sunday, you know? Yep. So all of these conversations are conversations we need to be having individually amongst each other and as a community.
Yes. Yes. So look,
I'm thankful I had an opportunity. And we gonna have these conversations more. It might be off the camera, but
Sure.
I have some I'm trying to work out that I think will help us systemize and scale. But I understand not everybody wants to see that.
Oh, I definitely want to see it, and I'm there for it. And tell us, man, before we get off, you got something coming on tomorrow, bro. You didn't even tell us about it. What's up with that?
Oh man, yeah. It's funny because I just looked at my phone and there were like 2 more tickets sold. I'm like, you only got like 6 more tickets left.
That's what I'm talking about.
The Entrepreneurship Incubate, the Entrepreneur Incubator, presents our first monthly. We're going to be doing a masterclass workshop. I know y'all have been to conferences. I know you've been to expos where people just talk to you. We're actually trying to help pour into you. So you're going to be doing homework. I sent out emails all week that have been having people do pre-work before they even get to the event, where they're actually coming to the event and they've got pre-work that they've actually done before they arrive. We're not just going to talk at you, talk to you. We want you to actually come and leave with something of value that you can actually implement into your work. So I'll actually be doing a session on the power of the intentional mind. I look back at my experiences and I look back at my growth and my evolution. And I've realized that a lot of my evolution has really become, as I've become more intentional about who I am, what my purpose is, and then the steps necessary to get there. So I'll be sharing that because I know a lot of times people struggle. I'm not getting any support for my business. I don't know what I should do. And I think that a lot of it just starts with, I'm not going to spoil it. I'll just say that we're gonna pour into you. I've been a little under the weather this week. I'm feeling a little bit better. My goal is to leave empty when I leave tomorrow evening. So definitely feel free to check us out. We're on Eventbrite, the Entrepreneurship Incubator Masterclass Workshop. Reach out to me at Leg Console on any of our social media platforms, and I'll be more than happy to share the link and information with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, guys, as you know, normally when we drop these videos, the description, everything is going to be underneath. His links, everything is going to be in the description. And however you can get in touch with this brother, please, like he said, we don't have an excuse. I can send a message to my friend in Trinidad right now. I get on WhatsApp and we talk. He in Trinidad and I'm here. All right. So we have no excuse anymore. All right. So reach out to the brother. Leg Consult. Okay. Leg Consult. That's it. Very easy.
Actually, it's Console. No
Console. T. I'm sorry. My bad. I thought I was mixing up the New York accent. My fault. So
no worries. I apologize.
Yeah. Console. All right. So make sure you please reach out. Give this brother some attention, not just attention, but intention. All right. In the way that you interact and in the way that you're going to support the Entrepreneurship Incubator, which I will be at also tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. So look, guys, this is the Well-Rounded Coach's Corner. I really appreciate you who have listened to this point. I thoroughly enjoy doing these. It's a passion of mine to talk to people from all over the space. This brother here, he's told you some of his world travel. So to have a mind like his, be able to come and speak to somebody who is from the city of Atlanta, went from the city of Atlanta and just kind of traveled around the United States. I've been out the country and stuff, never lived there. But to have his mind be able to share with us manhood, the idea of manhood from being able to see all of these different cultures. I hope that you guys really took this in, and please, feel free to email me or talk to me. As you guys know, I always put my information in everything I'm doing, because secretly a lot of you do direct message me. A lot of you do email me, and I really appreciate it. And I always get back to you, whether it be at that moment or it be sometime later, because I'm dealing with what I'm with a client or something of that nature. So I really appreciate it. Thank you once again. And look, I'll see you guys again next Wednesday, God willing, and we'll have on our second guest to Men, Are We Under Attack? All right. So signing off here, and God bless.